and we're so happy and proud to have the opportunity to take part in this huge project, which is supported by the Hungary and the British Council. And that we are given this opportunity to open the first session with improving reading and speaking skills through critical reading. This is Bojan Nikic, and I'm Maja Jerković. We are both English language teachers and representatives of ELTA Serbia, which is our official teachers organization. What brought us together is the fact that we share a lot in common. Besides being teachers and teacher trainers, editors of ELTA Journal, we're also voracious readers. That's something that's really bonding. And we're also alumni of University of Oregon, where we had the opportunity to study in detail about critical thinking in the EFL curriculum. Because of this, we would love to acknowledge the following organizations for making it possible for us to be here with you today, and also for giving us the knowledge, which we'll hopefully share successfully with you today. These two people you can see are Dr. Paul Richards and Linda Elder, who are actually responsible for most of the activities which we have developed based on their research and based on their findings. I always love to tell my students what the session outline is, so I'll do the same with the teachers, with the participants. After a warm-up, we'll have a discussion of what critical reading and speaking is, what is non-critical, what is critical. We'll also talk about intellectual standards, how they must be applied to developments of reasoning and how they can help us think critically. And then a bit of Bloom's taxonomy and lots of activities that will help you promote critical thinking with your students. To start with a very simple activity, I will ask you to pick this colored piece of paper which you had on your chair once you arrived, or any other, and think of a simple task. And I'm sure you do it with your students. You ask them to find the odd one out. You have fruits or vegetables, and then you ask them to think about the odd one out. There's some other rule that applies. This time, think of these four words: penny, gold, watch, and chain. Think about it. So write the word which you think is the odd one out, and think about why. And at the back of the card, you may wish to write something with notes, because we'll ask you to share with us. Why do you think this specific word is the odd one out? What made you decide that this is the odd one out? How is that word different? It is different at all. And which word would it be? And gold watch. Yeah, think of your own explanation and clarification. Basically, that's, you know, you could. Good. Good. Just think of clarification. And don't copy from each other. Yeah. Good. This is yours. Have you all decided on the word? At least. Can I see your words? Can you put them up? We can see them. This is the penny, okay? Gold. You said? Penny. Penny. Can you put it up like this? It's penny, penny, gold, gold, penny. Anybody watch or a chain? You have both. I couldn't help make a decision. Okay? And you? Anybody watch or chain? She was thinking of a chain. Can you tell us why you thought that the chain was the odd one out? I'm just asking, yeah. Why was chain your first option? And then you...
Yeah, I changed. I changed my mind.
Yeah, you changed your mind.
Yeah,
Okay, why penny? Who said penny? Yeah, why penny?
I said penny because I thought of a gold watch on a chain.
Okay, and why gold? Some of you said gold. Who said gold?
Material.
Yeah, it's the only material. The only material, right. Any other clarification for gold? You had lots of ideas that gold is the odd one out.
Gold is always precious, whereas the others, we either gold, precious ones, or just simple.
That's good. That's good. Any other for gold? Because you had lots of other. So material is also very precious. Anything else? Any clarification? And penny? Any other clarification besides the one we heard?
You can't use it in a compound, like you can say gold watch or gold chain, but penny doesn't really go
Right.
with
Doesn't complicate much with some other words, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, the correct answer is something you'll hear a bit later. I'll have to suspense till the end of this session, and then I'll tell you. What is critical reading? Do you think that this man is reading critically?
No.
It's frowning. Focusing. Well, critical reading is not simply close and careful reading. You have to basically, this is the key here, recognize and analyze evidence upon the page, right? So whatever you're given, and whatever reading material you're given, you have to recognize and analyze evidence. Critical reading means that the reading applies certain processes, models, and questions. And questions are the key words here. That result in enhanced clarity and comprehension. For critical reading, we say that it's an analytic activity because we have to analyze and infer, and question. These are the tools we rely upon. Non-critical readers, they look for facts. They memorize, they accept what is written. They don't question anything. Whereas critical readers, they realize that the text provides only one's viewpoint or one individual's portrayal of the fact. Critical reading is a technique for discovering information and ideas within a text. So, not just reading what is said, but how it is said. So, not just what the text says, but also how the text portrays the subject matter. I would say that this is one of the favorite definitions that I managed to find so far. And you will receive the material, it's uploaded on the blog, so feel free to download this PowerPoint later. Intellectual standards, which I mentioned when I did the session outline, must be applied to the elements of reasoning as we learn to become more critical and as we learn to develop intellectual traits. And this is what we have selected as the most important in reading. Clarity, because critical readers, they look beyond to see if something is clear. We have accuracy, they're checking whether something is accurate. So for example, you have most dogs weigh 300 pounds. Most dogs weigh 300, well, that's clear, right? But it's not accurate. So, in order to have a critical thing, the text, then you have to have it all. Most of the things checked. Relevance, to say the information written is relevant. Or depth, how, to actually decide if the author deals with the depth of the issue. Right? So that's also important. Imagine a leaflet which says, just say no to the drugs, for example. Right? So just say no. It's extremely clear, it's very accurate, it's also relevant, but it's not deep enough. Right? So just say no. It will not discourage children from using drugs or any other illegal substances. Breadth also, a critical reader needs to understand whether the author approaches the topic from multiple viewpoints. And we'll also discuss it in examples a bit later. Logic, to decide if the text makes sense. So these are the standards that need to be applied, while it can be applied to any sort of material, any kind of reading. Inference, which I mentioned, is the tool of critical reading. So what we'll try to do now is to think about this sentence. You can copy it on this piece of paper. And tell us, what can we conclude based on specific evidence, right? Because inference is a mental process by which we reach a conclusion based on specific evidence. So think of this sentence and tell me, what can we infer based on what evidence? The sentence reads, saving every penny she could for months with this result. You may decide to read it with whatever intonation or with in whatever way you wish, so you don't have to read it that way. How do you understand this sentence, and what can be inferred based on this evidence? Can I have anybody telling us? What does that tell us? It's a woman, right? She, right? That's the first. Is that the evidence? She. We can infer that this is a woman. Okay. Do we know if she's a young woman, she's a middle-aged woman, an elderly woman?
We know that she's been doing it for months.
Okay, we know that she's been doing something for months, right? So she's been in a lengthy process. Doing what? Saving. Okay, when do we save money? Have you ever saved money? Not successfully, but just trying to save some money. Okay. So saving for
Months.
okay, for a long time. When somebody saves money, it means that this person needs.
Is older than 18.
Okay, she's older than 18, right? Because of the saving, right? Could be. Oh, that's true. I mean, you don't think she's you think even a 7-year-old girl could be saving money? Okay. With this result, what does that tell you? With this result?
She did buy something with the money.
Okay, with this result, like ready that way.
No.
Or with this result. That would be unsuccessful. Okay, can I tell you and add, or do you have anything to add to this? My students told me this is a very important evidence. What does that tell you? Penny.
It's small money, like
Okay. Right? What else?
She's
Yeah, can you speak up?
She's British.
She's British. Right. Yeah, they saw it immediately, which might come as a surprise to you when you start doing some activities with your students. They might recognize some of the other inferences that even we haven't thought of. So this is brilliant. And another inference, and this is a longer passage. There were 2 possessions in which they both took a mighty pride. One was his gold watch. Did any of you say gold? Did any of you say penny? At the beginning? Okay, one was his gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was her hair. Okay? So, what can we infer based on this evidence? Here.
There's a couple.
There's a couple. Good. Yeah? It's because they. Do we know that they're a couple? No. Can we infer something else?
Brothers, sisters.
Related. We still don't know, right? But these are inferences. What else?
The gold watch is very old
Okay.
because it was a possession of fathers and grandfathers.
Right. Yeah. If something is old and it's been in the possession, it's a family. What? Family treasure, family tradition. Okay. What do we also know about the father and the grandfather? It's not a really nice inference, but it's. Yeah. How do we know that? Yeah, because it's passed on. Good. Yeah. So we know we can infer lots of other things here. Trust me, I did it with my students, and they added as many inferences as they could. But I'll ask Boyana to continue with another activity, and I'll tell you that there's no right, correct, or wrong answer when it came to this first activity which we did. The point with this was actually for you to focus on the words as a whole, or to words in different contexts that you could have imagined or you thought of. And these sentences later on and the passage are all from this text. We won't be doing this text because it's a lengthy one. And we love it so much that we wanted to share it with you. And you will read it later on at home with your students. I'll briefly tell you that it's a story of a young couple who loved each other so much. It was Christmas Eve. They wanted to give proper gift to each other. So he had his gold inherited from his father and grandfather. She had her hair. She cut her hair and sold. She sold her hair to buy a chain, but he sold his watch to buy her a set of combs. Yeah, so combs which she didn't need later on. Anyway, it's a sad story, but my students loved it. I hope your students will enjoy it. You can. This is the original version by John Henry, the gift of the Magi, but you can basically adapt it for your students' needs. Well, I will continue now with another reading material. This is something for you to take home.
Yes, and now we will move from this lovely story about couple and Christmas Eve to something a bit different. It is a story about, let's say, one event that happened during the Tina Turner's wedding. And now we'll have a text about it. And why we start with this text? Because in order to critically speak, you need to critically read the text. And in most textbooks, as you know, reading comprehension is closely connected with speaking itself. So when it comes to this particular text, first we'll deal with the text itself. I'll ask you to read the first part of the text, think for a second about it, and then move on to the second part of the text. And you can tell us later how your opinion changed after you have had both points of view. Okay? So briefly go through the text, and then we'll move on. So what have you learned in the first part of the story? What happened?
Oprah Winfrey wasn't served properly.
So Oprah wasn't served properly, and she complained about it, yeah?
Yes.
You know it. Okay, let's see what happened from the other point of view. Yes, yes.
I think this is about stereotypes. People have and so on. I don't know how to explain that, but the shopping system basically is stereotyping.
Do you agree?
They're used when they see like people with bad skins or unusual clothes maybe. They feel like but they don't wait for the final.
That's right. And if you read just the first part of the story, would you get a complete view of what happened there?
No.
No, that's right. So, as Maya mentioned, in order to critically read, we have to be able to see that this is the only one portrayal of the story. And in order to critically read, we need to look for accuracy, to have all the relevant evidence and depth and breadth in order to have the whole story and then judge what really happened there. Okay, as I mentioned, so this text could be used for reading comprehension. It is provoking enough to make your students talking, and we have a very handy tool for that. It is called Bloom's taxonomy, something that you maybe have heard of. And it deals with the levels of thinking. As we move upwards, we have higher orders of thinking. The first one is remembering, and here we have recalling, listing, describing, retrieving, naming, finding something within the text. The next one would be understanding, where your students should be able to explain the ideas, the concepts, to summarize the text, or to retell the text, to classify or explain some details within the text. The next level should be applying. It is using information in a familiar situation, and this is more useful for, let's say, natural sciences, but it can also be used in languages, especially when dealing with grammar, when you teach rules and the students are expected to apply those rules. And next is analyzing, and now we step into the area of critical thinking. Those three levels that we mentioned do not require mental strain from your students, but this analyzing is a bit more demanding. So here they're expected to break information into parts and then analyze them, to contrast, compare, deconstruct, to interrogate the information within the text, and then again to put it in one whole. And the next one is evaluating, where they're expected to give their personal opinion based on the facts. So they should justify a decision on their personal view. They should be able to check, critique, judge, experiment within the information they have. And the last one, the most demanding, is creating something new. And the language itself is that way that you always create something new, and it is expected from your students to create something new, some new ideas, products, and it involves planning first of all, and then producing, inventing, constructing, and designing. So when we have these levels of thinking, starting from the lowest to the highest, we'll use it to deal with the reading comprehension now. So within these texts, I'll ask you to, we'll work in groups of 6. I'll ask you to think of an activity or a question that would be suitable for certain level that you get. Yes, in groups of 3, yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll work in groups of 3. So the 3 of you, yes, the 3 of you, the 3 of you, if it's possible, yes. And here we have a lot of okay. You're supposed to think of a question or an activity that would promote a certain level of thinking. And we'll deal with all levels because it is very useful for mixed ability classes. Almost every student, no matter what level of knowledge they have regarding English, can do at least remembering or understanding.
With this material?
Yes, with this material. That's right.
go through this text and investigate and do after the text. So this will create some question or an
Okay, let's start now. Have you finished? Okay, I see that you find this very interesting. I'm glad to see that. So what do you have for remembering?
So there are chapters in different types. For example, making a chart, who, or what we can do with the bags. We list the bags, but in a different order than it was in the story, and then students have to put it into the right order. Or we put the names down, so Tino Turner or Crosby and the name of the shop, and students can't see the text after reading, and they have to put there the explanation what is what.
Excellent, that's right. So some of the possible activities for remembering, apart from these wonderful examples, could be making a list of main events or timeline of events, or naming the characters, the events, the piece of any information that you can remember. Okay, thank you very much. Now, what's about understanding? Yes,
Understanding. We would divide the group into, or the class into two groups, and one of them would receive one text and the other one would receive the other one, and they should pretend that they're the jury and they have to make a decision if this really actually was an act of stereotyping. And then when they make the decision, they have to, in at least 3 points, explain that or justify that, why they made that decision. And then they will obviously come up with different decisions. Yes. And then they can further take it, to the next level to
deeper analysis.
The justification would be
Yes, a higher level. Yeah, it's a nice introduction for high level thinking. Yes, that's right. Thank you. So, for understanding, retell the story or write a summary. So there's the starting level, so they should be able to understand what really happened in the story in order to retell it or to write a summary. Yes, and then we move to what you have just said. Right, applying. Yes, please.
So we thought of some activities, for example, cutting up the story into paragraphs, and then the students would have to reorder them, or taking out some words, making a slightly close gapped text, or two groups of students would get the different text and they would write statements, true false statements, and then they would exchange the stories, the text, and decide if the statements were true or false. So they would work with the text.
Very, very nice examples. Thank you.
Application is one of the most
Yes,
difficult ones.
yes, application in languages can be very demanding, and you give excellent examples. That's right. So to compare or make a puzzle or a game about a topic, it is more suitable for younger learners. Also to illustrate a story, describe or something like that. It can be also used there. The next one, analyzing. Okay,
They're kind of similar ideas.
let us hear them.
So our was in comparing the text, so you could give them true or false sentences, they might decide if they're true or false, but find the evidence in
To
text.
find the evidence.
Yes. If you're organizing the text, then cutting up the text so that you must connect it to it.
Okay.
Interrogate and gap fill. So one person has some piece of information about that, the other has the other.
Like a jigsaw activity.
Yeah, jigsaw activity. Yes, it can be. Yes. Yes.
If I may just add, this is a nice feedback which we received from you. When you said they would also have triple sentences, but this time at this level they would also provide evidence.
Evidence
Go
with the
into
text.
depth, which is how these two levels are different, and that makes a good explanation.
Yeah, and maybe they can compare the two characters in the text.
Yes.
Just analyze them.
Compare their
To compare the stories. That's right. So maybe also we can use a questionnaire to gather information and then make a judgment about it, or to conduct an investigation to support your view, or write an analysis of the work, why, when, how it, nothing happened. That's right. Okay, evaluating.
It was very difficult not to jump forward to the creative stage. But finally we thought that we had two stories where we have the same facts but different conclusions. So we asked the students to examine the specific points from which the speakers drew these conclusions. So it's examining the statements, the reactions, so looking at the text very closely.
So yes, you can see now we are applying those intellectual standards to see are the all components there. That is correct. So when it comes to evaluating, we can conduct a debate or panel discussion or even argumentative presentation that is between evaluating and creation. That would be the step further. But that debate and discussion are very useful in order to make like that brainstorming, or for example essay writing or presentation. And creating.
We weren't very creative. So we thought they could write an article with the possible consequences, about the possible consequences. The other one was they could act it out.
Yes.
And there was one more idea that they should rethink the whole thing, that if this whole thing would have happened to someone who had been a brunette from Paris.
Yes, that's right. Yes, thank you very much. So yes, we can write an essay or make a role play, as you said, or make a talk show, since we have Oprah. Maybe she could be a guest in our talk show, and the shop assistant on the other side. So it can be very interesting for your students. So now we basically went through all the stages when it comes to reading comprehension and that is speaking, because in my experience I noticed that most textbooks with those lower levels of analyzing the texts, somehow they skip that analyzing and evaluating and just jump to creating. And I think that those two steps are very important in order to create something that involves and critical thinking as well.
The handout where you see all levels of potential activities, everything written down, so you can have a look at it at home.
And now we
Design activities based on these levels.
So first, and now we will focus on specific area of critical thinking, that is argumentation, and how to teach our students to speak and support their personal point of view. And there are a lot of activities that can promote critical thinking among your students, and I think that being able to speak and support your opinion and stand for your own opinion, stand up for your opinion is very important. Some of the activities we already applied during our session. For example, we had Think, Pair, Share, where we thought about a certain issue, then we exchanged the information with our colleague or partner, and then we shared the activities in this case that you came up with. Also, it can be done in puzzle groups, where the group works together and then reports the opinion. With Maya, you had opinion vote when you did the activity 5 odd one, where you voted, and later on it is nice introduction for a debate, for example. Also, hearing is for me very interesting, because in this case we can have experts among our students who are not that much good in English, but they are experts in some other area. It's like sport or films, and they can talk and give their personal opinion about something, and in that way we can motivate them to be more active during the lessons, and the rest of the class can then, after they have heard their opinion, conclude on some issue that they're dealing with. Network is also interesting. Maybe it can be used for both adults and children, where you have a ball of string and your students unwind the ball as they are talking. The moment they stop unwinding it, and they hand the ball to another student, and it is used to see how long was their yes. So they can self-monitor how much they talked, and in that way they can be more critical towards their participation during the lesson. Because sometimes we talk and we are not aware how much we really talk. Another one is onion ring. It is very interesting. You have two circles, inner circle and outer circle, and the students are sitting facing each other, and it can be very useful for the gap text and gap information that you mentioned. So the inner circle is static and the outer circle is moving slowly. So they talk to each other, facing each other. After they exchange the information, the circle is moving for one chair, or if they're standing there, just move to the next person. And it is very useful because we can use it to get a lot of information from different perspectives. And many others, as you can see, networking, we mentioned STAR also. It is a form of buzz group where you share your opinion, form a final opinion to say, but you send a representative to see what other groups are thinking about it. He reports his findings. Yes, like a spy, yes. He reports his findings, and maybe your group will change the opinion after they have heard that. And we have one very useful activity. It is minute paper, and that's what we'll do right now with you. We'll use 1 minute at the end of the lesson, this time session, and write down what you have learned during this session. In 1 or 2 sentences, whatever you
And you will see that we have our emails here below, so if you wish to get all of these activities maybe written down, you can always contact us.
We'll send you the details, the procedures, everything.
Yes, you can ask for some additional details about the session. So 1 minute paper, write down, and if you have any questions, think about what you would like to ask us at the end, as we are approaching the end of the session.
I have become more aware of the levels of activities and the activities themselves that can be organized around the text.
Thank you. That's the outcome of this session. Yes, this group here.
Can we ask you? Sorry.
Yeah, two things. One is a small thing. Like I use the onion ring activity quite often, but I just called it double circle. So now I've learned this nice metaphorical name for it. And the other thing is how important it is to move beyond the application level and make students analyze, evaluate, and form.
Thank you. Good. Yes?
I felt quite happy that you asked us to write the one-way paper. I quite often do it to my students, but not I don't ask them to write. I ask them to tell me what we've done today, and they are so happy to share everything.
Thank you.
So that's basically re-evaluating or rethinking, re-examining the things that we have studied. Can I ask you to share?
Well, I learned that you should fully use the text that you have, so not just make a task on some basic level, but you can fully exploit it since you have it, it's alluded to. You shouldn't waste it.
Yes.
What happens basically is we have answer these questions, the typical activity after any reading material, and then it's just
You can move on to the next page.
Yes.
And you can also make speaking activities more organized and purposeful, that students don't have to feel that. They don't know how much you're in charge.
And so here. Yes.
Okay, I just realized how important was the sequence of the thought process, and like people said before, not just stop at, in the middle, but take it on.
and how you can level it from one word to a sentence to a paragraph, and then for the whole story. We decided to focus on another environment. I will tell you why we have decided to focus on another type of a story. And but basically, you can do it with any sort of genre. So.
It's basically why we had these two types of stories. First, we have literature story, and this was a gossip column, is to show that any kind of text, no matter is it a leaflet that Maya mentioned, or a gossip column, or a literature work, can be used to think critically about it and to involve in the whole process of thinking from the lowest to the highest level. And we hope that you will find this session and the information that you got useful for your future teaching. And we'd like you to thank you for coming as well. You were the nice audience. Thank you. Do you happen to have any questions? No? No? That means that everything is clear? Yes?
Can you do all these things in one lesson?
Yes, if it's 90 minutes, it can be done.
In 90 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, 40,
45 it can be done for reading comprehension. For example, reading the text and reading the reading comprehension.
We focus on one text.
Yes.
Real lesson, we focus
90
on one
minutes
text.
would be perfect, right?
Yeah.
But you can break this into two lessons, so do reading in one and then introduction in the second.
We wouldn't mix genre with
Yes.
students.
Yeah.
We just wanted to show
Yes.
potential with teachers.
And we would have that recycling that is important to use it for
Like we do this.
yes.
Enjoy the rest of